Episode 228, a number to send chills. This is the World Organic News for the week ending 24th of August 2020. John Moore reporting. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. This week we're going on a 30,000 foot overview. As some of you may know, I'm currently back at uni, studying for a diploma in sustainable living. This is 25 years odd after my bachelor's degree, where I double majored in archaeology. It's been fun so far, but there's one unit entitled Humans, Earth Shapers. As anyone who's done any archaeology will know, that's what humans do. We change things. To be fair, all species change their local environments. We, one species, just happen to be on all the continents, and we're armed with technology. The point I'm getting to is this. In an intro lecture, the carbon dioxide levels during glacial and interglacial periods was described. The point being that over time the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere can pretty directly be correlated with the amount of ice coverage on the planet. Low levels of CO2 mean more ice, and the converse is true too. The interesting point made was this. The amount of change in CO2 levels between the coldest and the warmest periods is the same amount, again, we've added since about 1750. This would be fine maybe if we were in a cold period, but we weren't and we aren't. So from the bottom of the curve 12,000 years ago at the end of the Pleistocene to now, 10 to 12,000 years into the Holocene, the CO2 levels are now double what they would have been were we at the same time after every other glacial period for the last 800,000 years. This is the number that sent chills down my spine. I knew things were crook when I saw an interview with a farmer years back. He said they used to start silage cutting in the first week of November when his father ran the property. He now starts at the end of August, 10 weeks earlier. And remember, this is in the southern hemisphere, and August has a reputation for being the coldest month of the year. I knew things were even crooker, that's a word now, when I saw temperature records from a wine company based in Victoria. These records date back 130 odd years. In the records were recorded time of harvest, atmospheric temperatures at harvest, as well as rainfall and so on. And the temperatures at harvest remained fairly static until about 30 or 40 years ago, when they started to rise. They appear to be rising increasingly more quickly. So worrying was this trend, the wine company purchased land and set up vineyards here in Tasmania. Tasmania, for those of you who don't know, is the tiny little island to the south of the Australian mainland, pretty much just below Victoria, which is where the wine company was. So a move to Tasmania means they're moving further away from the equator into what is generally considered to be a cooler climate. And it's also where I currently call home. Then Friday I noticed an article from The Guardian posted by one of my sisters to social media. Greenland ice sheet lost a record 1 million tonnes of ice per minute in 2019. Link in the show notes. Quote, the Greenland ice sheet lost a record amount of ice in 2019, equivalent to 1 million tonnes per minute across the year, satellite data shows. The climate crisis is heating the Arctic at double the rate in lower altitudes, and the ice cap is the biggest single contributor to sea level rise at present, which already imperils coasts around the world. The ice sheet shrank by 532 billion tonnes last year at its surface, as its surface melted and glaciers fell into the ocean, and would have filled 7 Olympic-sized swimming pools per second, end quote. And now if you cast your minds back to that dim memory we all have of the time BC, that is before COVID, you'll remember, I hope, how the mainland of Australia suffered through the biggest bushfire season since white colonisation. Quote, As of the 9th of March 2020, the fires had burned an estimated 18.6 million hectares, that's 46 million acres, or 186,000 square kilometres, or 72,000 square miles. Destroyed over 5,900 buildings, including nearly 2,800 homes, and killed at least 33 people. Nearly 3 billion terrestrial vertebrates alone, the vast majority being reptiles, were affected, and some endangered species are believed to have been driven to extinction. At its peak, air quality dropped to hazardous levels in all southern and eastern states. And I can confirm that it even drifted across the water between us and the mainland known as Bass Strait, which is about 430 k's wide. And just to make sure we're all on the same page and keeping the same score sheet, this post from the 7th of August. Another intense summer of fires in Siberia from the NASA Earth Observatory site reminds us of other ongoing blazes. Oh, and there's currently 2,498 active fires in the US. The Governor of California has requested assistance from both Canada and Australia in dealing with the fires in his state. Things are, as I say, a crook. On top of all this wonderful news, this coming week I'll become a grandfather for the very first time. Now, evolutionary theory being what it is, the genes aren't really considered safe and passed on until they've reached the grandchildren. So great, I'm going to be a successful organism and my genes travel on through time. Equally, I am therefore the living expression of my 4 grandparents, all born between 1899 and 1914. These genes have been through some interesting times already. But what about now as a time to be born? The COVID thing is but temporary. Even if we're curtailed in our movements at the moment until we have a vaccine, this will pass. All the political hoo-ha going on will pass too. But ticking away in the background, our first fires for the season have erupted on the mainland. And this is all with the rising level of CO2 in the atmosphere. And of course there's methane and all the other fun greenhouse gases, but let's stick with CO2. There are days when I despair for our species, for the species we could be taking down with us. On a meta level, life goes on. The biosphere has been through mass extinctions before, not just the dinosaurs that everyone knows about, but others too. Life just keeps on doing what it does, filling niches, expanding to exploit resources, and species arise and species go extinct. Are we ready to face the end of our kind? Are we ready to consign vast numbers of species along with us to the geological record? I would hope not. We can but do what we can do, and getting the word out is not sufficient anymore. We must rehabilitate what we have corrupted, often with good intention, yet we have corrupted it. We must save what we have left of whatever passes for wilderness nowadays. We must shorten our supply lines. We must eat locally. We just must grow more of our own food. Share it with our neighbours and teach by example. We must, I think, as the late Bill Mollison so succinctly put it, move from consumption to production. Bill suggested we only needed 10% of us to do this back when he wrote in the 70s. I'm thinking it's closer to 50% now, but we must do it, and do it in a way that heals and does not destroy. We must put in the groundwork now. We can all change the world. We can, in fact, decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. Thank you all for listening, and I'll be back next week with birth weights, a name, and another generation following after me.